Hello and welcome to You've Seen It Before, TV reviews and connections in mind, and welcome to the first installment in my review and reaction series to each and every episode of Season 3 of The Orville, or as it's now called, The Orville New Horizons. Now, if you've never seen one of my reaction episodes before, this is where I give my brief overview of the latest episode of whatever TV show I happen to be reviewing at the time. Give my thoughts, overview of the episode, my thoughts on what I liked, disliked, what I thought worked and didn't work, as well as some analysis of certain plot developments and character arcs that may seem familiar to you and where you may have seen them before. Now, just to get out of this way, there will also be a full spoiler review and reaction of the latest episode of The Orville New Horizons. So, if you've not seen this latest episode yet, I highly recommend coming back when you have, because this will be full-on spoilers from here on out. So with that being said, without further ado, let's get into The Orville New Horizons Season 3, Episode 1, entitled Electric Sheep. Now, this is picking up relatively close right after we left off, even though there is a time jump both in narrative-wise and in time-wise, because it's hard to believe that it's been probably over 2 years since the last episode of Season 2 of The Orville aired, and, you know, the pandemic obviously delayed production a lot, and they had to move from Fox to Hulu now. But in that time, there's clearly been some soul-searching and trauma to be had among the crew of The Orville, because this episode opens up with a rather stunningly realized but brutal dream sequence from Marcus as he is, in this nightmare reliving the battle between the Union and the Caylon from Identity, the two-parter from Season 2. And, obviously the crew is, overall, is having difficulties with Isaac. He's now the physical embodiment of the species that wants to exterminate their species, and he played a big part in that extermination plot. He essentially betrayed everyone, so a large portion of the crew is not happy to see him there. And we got this introduction to our latest addition to the Orville crew, the regular cast member, Ann Winters as Ensign Charlie Burke. She basically tells Isaac straight to his face, shares a story of what she went through on the USS Quimby, and how her friend sacrificed herself to save her from the battle, and basically it's like, no, you got to get lost because it sickens people to be here. Light stuff to start this season, and it doesn't get any lighter from here because Orville, because Isaac's the target of let's call what it is, a hate crime, where if in the science lab, which is basically his quarters, he has someone painted along the wall, murderer, in bright red paint, and after experiencing all this, and understandably Ed and Kelly are and the other senior staff are understandably concerned about this, but the rank and file crew are still very displeased with Isaac. Burke even tells Ed straight to his face, your crew is scared. Like, we don't think this is the right decision reinstating Isaac at this point. And all this culminates in the fact, Marcus is revealed to be the person who painted murder on the wall. And, once Claire and Isaac confront Marcus about this, Isaac obviously, he says, I am sorry for causing you distress, and Marcus just basically flat out says, I want you dead. And that leads to Isaac, they say it, the primers say it, he committed suicide. He commits suicide. He basically sets up a EM pulse that basically fries his neural circuitry, and is basically determining that there's no going back from this. So the good middle chunk of the movie of this episode is the crew, and especially Claire and her family, kind of dealing with the aftermath of that, and John has a touching moment, post-coital, as it were, when he reflects on The fact that Isaac gave him a fork as a birthday present, and how funny that was, but it's the smallest thing that kind of reminds you of The Departed. But that gives the inspiration to think, hey, there's probably even more backup of his consciousness buried deep in there, which they determined, yes, there is. However, it's in a highly unstable situation, and even the slightest EM disruption can fry what's left of Isaac at this point. So they put it in a stasis field, which is barely holding together at this point. And it turns out the only way to reconstitute Isaac in this into his body is someone who can think fourth dimensionally, as Doc Brown might say. And the only person on the crew who would do that is, of course, Ensign Charlie Burke. And so that's the huge conflict of the third act. Will she or won't she help them? Things get interrupted when a Caylon battleship attacks the Orville, and the Orville has to escape by flying into the atmosphere of a very stormy gas giant. And obviously gets knocked around a bit. There's deception. The Orville pretty much fakes being dead, so the Caylon move away. However, in this, as a result of their subterfuge, there's now a huge time crunch on the degradation of this matrix that has Isaac's backup consciousness in it. So then we get a very emotional scene between Burke and Marcus, who is dealing with the grief of I told Isaac I want him dead, and he killed himself because of me. So those kind of complicated emotions, and they have a conversation where Burke's like, it's like, any death is a tragedy, but I'm glad he's dead. But don't be like me. You don't want to carry this around out at your age. This is some great conversation going on here, but by the end, it turns out Burke has a change of heart. She resurrects Isaac, and Isaac successfully thinks like, I don't understand. I did my suicide attempt not work. It's like, no. And he's like, oh, Burke, you helped me? It's like, I didn't do it for you. Obviously, a reference to I did it to in honor of we don't know exactly what her reasons were. For the good of the Union, to honor her friend's memory. We don't know that yet. It's kind of left up to to interpretation on that one. But obviously, the episode ends with Isaac kind of coming to terms where it's like, no, it's like, why did I attempt suicide at this point? Because I thought it would be best for the crew. And Claire's final speech, there's no basically saying there's no problem so insurmountable that it can't be fixed with time, and confusing the future with the present. Again, really light stuff for an opening episode to a season, right? So that's basically where we leave it off. Isaac's back at work, and obviously there are some rifts that are going to take time to heal, but they're kind of set on the right path now. So, man, this was a heavy episode. I know season 2 we dealt with a lot of more heavier subject matter. Improper infatuation, porn addiction, so many other heavy subject matters at this point. But I mean, this is probably the one of the heavier episodes of the Orville yet, and I was not expecting that at all. But I think it works really well, because I think that where the series has found its strength, especially found its strength in the second season, it's really found its strength now, is it's not running away from the hard discussions at this point. It's being very honest about them, while not really giving up there's still some comedic soul going on in the Orville. However, I mean, obviously that it was probably tamped down way more for this episode. We'll see if it picks up in later episodes of this season. But overall, yeah, this I would say by now the Orville New Horizons has found its path, and not it's found the right balance between humor and heart, for lack of a better term. And I think it did that better in spades. One thing I also want to comment on is it's pretty obvious that they had a big polish on the production value of the Orville. It kind of reminds me of what they did with the Enterprise D from the Next Generation Season 7 to Star Trek Generations, where they gave the all the sets of the Enterprise D a facelift, where it's like, I mean, bring it up to more cinematic quality for one, but also it's like the implication. I think one of the production designers at the time kind of said, like, when we redesigned the bridge, we added like different things. Where it's like, oh, this is what it was always looked like the whole time. Where that guy was always there, just off camera, and you never saw it. But this is what it was always meant to look like. I get that same kind of vibe here, and it looks great. And there were a lot more glamour shots of the Orville than I was expecting, because I think they kind of wanted to show off the increased production value and the greater CGI on this, maybe because they're filming this in higher definition than they were last season. I don't know. I like it. My only worry is that it maybe looks a little too similar to Star Trek Discovery from that vantage point. And you know, I've said this in other reviews, especially my review of Discovery Season 4, where, you know, looking good is fine, but there's a certain aesthetic to looking slightly cheap, and I kind of liked it better the way it looked before in Season 2, where it was kind of a more homage to Star Trek The Next Generation, where it's like, yes, the camera quality is obviously bumped up from, you know, 2019, 2020 over 1986, but it still had that same kind of grain to it, if that makes sense, and it looked more homage to The Next Generation then. Now it still has that look mostly, but it feels like it's more pulling in the direction of aesthetically of, you know, of Discovery. And I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but I'm worried that it would go too far in that direction. But so far it looks okay, but I mean, in my opinion, like it's only like this, only this much on the side of the line of good, in my perspective. I might be crazy on that. Let me know in the comments down below if you think I'm just nuts for thinking like that. One other thing I kind of liked, but I was also like, is there's a plot point where Gordon is testing a new like one-man fighter craft of the Union, and I guess it's going to be added to the ship's complement. So they go on a shakedown test while Orville is still in space dock, and Burke is, I guess, remote piloting these 4 target drones that are shooting at him, and Gordon's trying to shoot them all down. Which, as an action sequence, is fine. My whole thought going through it, it was like, oh, it's a fun little target thing. But when the first one actually like blows up and scatters debris, it's like, oh, Gordon's using live ammo, and we're in space dock where he's flying, zipping around all around this, like all the very important, very expensive, you know, equipment of the Union, the Orville included, all these other ships. Like, maybe don't conduct a live weapons shakedown test while you're in space dock. That's just me, but that seems like a really bad idea. So I was kind of shocked that no one made that comment. That would be so in keeping with the Orville, but that was just my kind of hang up on this one. So some things that I noticed in this episode that you may have seen before is, you know, that first dream sequence where, you know, the camera's kind of zipping around and flying around like that. It made me think of the opening, it's not the very opening scene, but the first like glamour shot in Serenity, when, you know, after a long time, a decent amount of time passed between the show and the next installment of the series, you kind of have to get reintroduced to the ship. And so they kind of do it a more elaborate way to reintroduce the interior of the ship and the exterior of the ship, and that kind of reminded me of that, which I love that scene in Serenity, and I think they did a really good job with this one as well. And lastly, there was one, you know, the situation with Burke, you know, and her friend Amanda sacrificing herself to let her go. That situation where it's like, oh no, the door's jammed, we can't do it, so, well, I'll do a manual launch. Of course, it can only be activated from outside the pod, which seems like a really serious design flaw to me, but of course that's how it works. And she goes outside, she sacrifices herself, closes the door so Burke can get away. Maybe think of episode of Stargate Atlantis where Rodney is trapped in a sinking puddle jumper and his pilot is badly injured. It's like, of course they have to get into the back of the pod, however, the door won't close, but it only close in the compartment that is about to be crushed by the seawater, and so the pilot goes and sacrifices himself and Rodney gets to live. That was my point of comparison there. Those are my main two, but I'm sure there were others in there that I probably missed. But what did you think of this episode of The Orville New Horizons? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What about my analysis? Do you agree, disagree? Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back next week for episode 2, which looks like Hulu's going to be releasing these weekly, so that's a good thing in my opinion, keeping with the original release model from the previous 2 seasons. And so be sure to tune in for that. A suitably strong and very serious open to the season. I'm kind of hoping for the next episode that maybe they're gonna make it a little bit lighter and more humorous and punch up the humor a little bit more in the next episode. That's just me, especially coming after this this episode. So again, thank you so much for watching. But just remember, there is nothing new under the sun, and yes, you have seen it before.